The views and opinions expressed are those of the Wrestling Fans Insight and are not associated in any way with Libsyn.com or any of the major podcasting platforms. This podcast may contain some explicit language and adult material content not suitable for children. Listening discretion is highly advised. On this week's episode of the Wrestling Fans Insight, I am going to go into the reviews of this week's AEW and WWE weekly programming, on top of covering WWE's premium live event SummerSlam that took place Saturday, July 30th. Hello and good Sunday to you, everyone. This is John Hoppy, your host of the Wrestling Fans Insight. This week I am going to be co-hostless. Will called me roughly about an hour and a half ago and said he wasn't going to make it. He was out and about with one of his friends today and they were just out scouting around, and unfortunately we're still in that time where we're just like most other parts of the country, we're dealing with the really hot summer temps. And it just takes a lot out of one person if you're out in that heat all day. So I hope my brother is doing well. We'll hopefully get back on track next week. I'm going to do a little bit of different thing today. We're going to, with WWE having their premium live event SummerSlam last night on July 30th. I'm going to actually do AEW first. Mainly because there's actually, even though it was like the smaller part of the week, there was so much to cover. But same with WWE, there was quite a bit more to cover there too. But with the SummerSlam happening last night, as of this recording, I figured it would be better to cover the event that happened later, obviously toward the latter end of this podcast. But I hope you all can bear with me. I know I say but a lot. It's kind of like Ted the Hillbilly Hill saying, you know, and all the other podcasts doing the but and ums like I do. So I appreciate you tuning in, and we're going to get right into it. But first, I'm going to give you a little bit of a break of music here. Alright, let's kick it off with AEW Dynamite Fight for the Fallen the first night. Jon Moxley retains his AEW Interim Championship against Rush. Really great match. Rush dominated 2/3 of that match for the most part. But Jon Moxley was able to get the Bulldog choke in and gets Rush to pass out. Then we see Jericho, who's for whatever reason at the announce booth, don't know why, he basically jumps out of the seat and challenges Mox to a match for the AEW Interim Championship, and Mox basically says, hey, the only way I'm going to give it to you, I want the Lionheart, not these crappy ass gimmicks you've had the last few times with the company. So yeah, if we get the Lionheart, Chris Jericho and Jon Moxley, it's going to be an interesting match between those two. Second match of the night, we see Absolute Ricky Starks defeat Danhausen and retain the FTW Championship. Not a very long match, but I mean, it's what you expect. Danhausen's really hard to take as a serious competitor. He's kind of more of the comedic role character, and I think that's where they really need to keep him at, unless they're going to do something real major with him. But he definitely needs to improve his competitive skill if we're going to go that route. After that match, though, Ricky Starks issues another challenge and puts the FTW... I don't know why I have a hard time saying that. He's putting the FTW Championship on the line again. And I think it was pretty well with the way fans were chanting. Out comes Hook, and pretty much in dominant Hook fashion, he comes out, does his thing, gets the red rum right on Ricky Starks and becomes the new FTW champion, and the nice thing about the aftermath of this match, we see the the sign of respect between Ricky Starks and Hook. I mean, you couldn't have asked anything better for the two Team Taz members. In which, unfortunately, I think now we're seeing the breakup of Team Taz, because after the match, Ricky Starks was getting interviewed by Tony Schiavone, and unfortunately for Ricky Starks, Will Hobbs pretty much clotheslines him right on the back and neck, and gives Ricky Starks pretty good whiplash the way his head went forward. Little bit of a shock there to the fans. I don't think anyone was seeing that one coming, and Taz doing a great job at commentary, acting all surprised. I think this is pretty much the demise of Team Taz, or maybe we'll see a reform of it. Who knows? The one thing I do want to make note of Ricky Stark's interview was his way of trying to put it out there that he made the FTW Championship a recognizable title, and he did just that. I just feel with the way the second match went, it went to the better competitor, and I think it was time for Hook to kind of start establishing as an individual, not being a part of a group or a faction, and that's what Ricky Starks did. He just made he made Hook look really good. But now the real question is Hook and Ricky Starks going to stick together and try to keep Team Taz going, or are we going to see some better things in Hook's future, as well as Ricky Starks and Will Hobbs? We'll just definitely have to wait and see on that one. Match number 4 of the night, Sammy Guevara defeating Dante Martin, which was a pretty evenly matched between the two competitors. However, during the match, it may be possible, just by the looks of it, Dante Martin might have suffered a little bit of an ankle injury. We'll hopefully have a little more details down the road. But with that said, it slowed Dante down. Sammy Guevara was able to take advantage and gets the victory over Dante Martin. And then post-match, looked like Sammy Guevara was going to keep continuing to inflict the harm on Dante Martin until Sky Blue jumps in the way to prevent the attack. Tay Conti comes in, tries to get in the face of Sky Blue, which sets up Sky Blue to be attacked from behind from Jericho's Appreciation Society's newest member, Anna Jay. And they just continued the attack on Dante Martin and Sky Blue up until Eddie Kingston, Ortiz, and Ruby Soho come down to pretty much fight everyone off. I do think this helped a little bit with the build of the Tay Conti and Ruby Soho feud, ever since Tay Conti slammed Ruby Soho's hand with the car door. But I'm not really sure how well this is all going to jungle together now with Dante Martin and Sky Blue involved. Who knows, maybe we'll see a small alliance like I mentioned just a few seconds ago. Jungle Boy comes out and basically has some nice words to say to Christian Cage. He calls him a flat out a pussy on air, and it almost looked like he was very hesitant to actually say that, which I don't know why, because we've had no problem dropping shit or pretty much dropping the F-bomb. Obviously, though, TNT or production catches that just in time. But it definitely popped the fans when Jungle Boy lashed out on Christian, and it got very personal between Jungle Boy and Christian Cage. I think this is pretty much good storytelling between the two competitors. Jungle Boy throwing out there that the reason why Christian Cage was pissed off because he didn't get to collect a paycheck after finding out that, you know, he's got some big time pain to give out since he recently just got divorced, and Christian Cage still using all the personal attacks of Jungle Boy's family, referring to his dead father, you know, the late great Luke Perry, and even further going after Jungle Boy's mother and sister. I don't know if there's any way to cut a better personal rivalry right there with this type of a promo. Jungle Boy and Christian Cage doing a really great job with that. Going into match number 5, we see Swerve Strickland in a handicap match manages to get the victory over Smart Mark Sterling and the premier athlete Tony Nese. I think it went kind of almost as predicted, even though you could say you would think Tony Nese would manage to get the win, with Mark Sterling being kind of like the distraction boy, but it did not happen that way. Sir Strickland managed to beat Tony Nese down enough to keep him outside of the ring, gets a one-move trick on Mark Sterling, and gets the pinfall. Unfortunately, though, for Swerve, they cut backstage and noticed that Josh the Goods Woods, the Ring of Honor talent, takes out Keith Lee in the backstage area and is holding the AEW World Tag Team Championship. And this is going to make really interesting because I don't know if anyone's really been watching Ring of Honor lately. We're seeing a lot of interaction between Mark Sterling, Tony Nese, and Josh the Goods Woods. It may be looking like we're going to see a new tag team going and see who the first challengers are for the AEW Tag Team Championship. And it may be looking we're going to be seeing Swerve in the Glory go against the premier athlete Tony Nese and Josh the Goods Woods. Match number 6 is one where I've been griping about this type of thing with AEW. I think this is where they really need to start doing some kind of improvement with their women's division. However, match number 6, we had Thunder Rosa retain the AEW Women's Championship against Miyu Yamashita. And really, this was pretty much like a match you would watch on pay-per-view. That's how great this match really is. My worry is it was really the lack of promoting from AEW with Thunder Rosa's opponent on this. I really wish they would showcase these women a little better, give them more respect. To me, it just kind of feels like they've been treating the women as fill-ins, and that's not really how it should be. I do give props to WWE on this, as well as Impact Wrestling. Both companies know how to showcase them women a little better, and I think if we can show that the women get a little more time, they'll step it up and give the men a run for their money. However, yeah, Thunder Rosa gets the victory over Miyu Yamashita, and like I said, great physical match, pay-per-view quality style. I mean, it was just pound for pound something wrestling fans would just enjoy to see. And then going into the main event, which was really the killer match of the night, Daniel Garcia gets the victory over Bryan Danielson. Yes, you heard that right. Daniel Garcia gets the victory over the returning Bryan Danielson. Danielson had pretty much the advantage early on in the match until apparently he came off the top rope and managed to, and I'm hoping it was just really good acting, just kind of displaying like his past injuries with the neck and head, and he showcased that very well, and Garcia took the advantage and just ran with the rest of the match all the way through. Danielson wasn't able to really mount much of an offense after that. The one thing I was a little disappointed was the interference from Jake Hager, because I don't think that was really needed. If Bryan Danielson was being slowed down from displaying his, I guess you can say in a way, relapsed injury from the neck and head from the last decade, I just don't see how that made Daniel Garcia look that much better of a competitor. I think if Jake Hager didn't really have a role in that match, Daniel Garcia definitely would have stand out even taller in this match. I'm not saying he didn't stand tall. He did. He did really great, and I think getting the win over Bryan Danielson was definitely the way to get momentum going for Garcia. But right at the end, we see Garcia hit a spike pile driver and then really had a over-torqued sharpshooter on Danielson to make Bryan Danielson pass out, and the ref ended up just stopping the match. This was definitely the match that Garcia really needed, and it got him over really well. Bryan Danielson did a really great job selling for the kid, and I don't know, man. I don't know if this match could have went any better other than the whole Jake Hager interference. Overall, if I was to do a thumbs up, thumbs in the middle, thumbs down grade for this episode, it would be right in between the thumbs in the middle to thumbs up. There was a few things that really could have we could have had a little more logical storyline in there. I felt a few of the scenes definitely didn't really help some of the talent out. Who knows, maybe we'll see in future episodes here, it'll play a little different. Let's just keep tuned and see where everything goes. Alright, going right into AEW Friday Rampage, another night of the Fight of the Fallen. In the very first match, we see the Best Friends get the victory over Jay Lethal, Satnam Singh, and Sanjay Dutt, which was not really what you call a competitive, serious wrestling match. A little more of the comedic style, and it didn't really disappoint. The fans were still into the match. They just having a good old time. It was definitely fun watching Orange Cassidy try to have his way with Satnam Singh, and of course, the size difference between the two men. I mean, you had to be more realistic. Yeah, Orange Cassidy wasn't going to beat a guy that size. And really, I thought Best Friends did a really good job mounting their offense and trying to keep Lethal, Dutt, and Singh in their half of the ring, and that's what they did. However, right toward the end, we just see pretty much the victory of the Orange Punch onto Sanjay Dutt, and 1, 2, 3, it's over. Then we see, of course, you gotta have the typical heel thing. We got Jay Lethal, Sanjay Dutt, and Satnam Singh taking out Best Friends until Wardlow comes out, and which is kind of weird because you still see Wardlow compared to Satnam Singh, and you're thinking, holy hell. Not very often someone can make Wardlow look small, but Satnam Singh does. It's like comparing Omos to any of the other talent in WWE, and you just sit there and think, holy shit, where did he find these guys? Anyhow, yeah, basically Wardlow comes down, makes the save for Best Friends. Dutt, Lethal, and Singh eventually just leave the ring, and Best Friends and Wardlow stay in the center of the ring until the other three go away. Match number 2, All Ego Ethan Page gets the victory over Leon Ruff in a very quick squash match. Basically all it did was make Ethan Page's finisher look phenomenal. And the weird part was watching Stokely Hathaway come down to the ring and do some scouting, but it wasn't really clear. Was he scouting Ego Ethan Page or was he scouting Leon Ruff? It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. If he's definitely going for All Ego Ethan Page, it'll be interesting to see what Dan Lambert has to say about that. Going into match number 3, we have Lee Moriarty, the student, defeating his old teacher, Matt Sydal. And to me, the match just seemed a little rushed. I think both men could have definitely had a lot more in this match than what they got. But, like always, there's always that time constraint. And, what do you do? I mean, they just do the best they can with what they got. And it still wasn't a bad match, but it definitely could have been. We definitely could have got more out of these two guys. The one thing you did note is watching Moriarty kind of do some more transitioning toward the heel phase, because later in the match we see Stokely Hathaway come down again, and this time it was clear he was rooting for Lee Moriarty. So maybe we got yet another member of the Stokely Hathaway camp there. Be kind of interesting to see what happens. Going on to the main event, we have Anna Jay get the victory over Ruby Soho. Soho did a really great job making Anna Jay look like a very strong heel. The only thing that I was a little frustrated with was it looked like Ruby Soho was working her butt off, selling everything, but Anna Jay, she definitely could have sold the moves a little better. If you want to be a strong heel, you need to learn how to definitely sell, especially to the faces. You want to make yourself look like you're the typical heel. I did think it was a little creative. I mean, we saw MJF do it with CM Punk getting the tape under the chin on a chokehold, but Anna Jay manages to use a cast to put underneath the chin of Ruby Soho to get that choke out, and make it look really good. This was definitely not one of Anna Jay's best matches, but as she, like I mentioned earlier, if she continues to keep wrestling, she will get better. She just needs to really work on her selling. And now I'm going to just do a little bit of backtracking. My apologies. I don't know why I didn't make sure I write to say this at the beginning of the programming, but it started off with an interview of Claudio Castagnoli addressing the crowd, thanking them for their support with his career, and obviously celebrating his first ever world title victory. He, as many of you probably know by now, he won the Ring of Honor World Championship from Jonathan Gresham at Death Before Dishonor pay-per-view event. Congratulations to the guy. He definitely deserves it. And I guess at the segment, I wasn't really paying attention. That was my bad. Wheeler Yuta gets introduced by Claudio to come to the ring and say a few things. But, of course, Chris Jericho's got to throw his nose in there and all that. And what it come down to was Wheeler Yuta pretty much told Chris Jericho he can beat him, and then they kind of get in the classical argument that kind of like the Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck Looney Tunes where they did the rabbit season, duck season. That's the way Chris Jericho and Wheeler Yuta went, where Wheeler Yuta pretty much tricked Chris Jericho into having a match with him on next week's Dynamite, and the stipulation is if Wheeler Yuta ends up winning, he will take Chris Jericho's spot for the AEW interim championship against Jon Moxley. So definitely keep tuned Wednesday for AEW Dynamite. This will definitely be a killer match between Wheeler Yuta, who's really been improving his in-ring work, against the great Chris Jericho. The one thing in this podcast my wife always gives me feedback is I apologize too much, and I'm going to do it again. I apologize. I didn't really have much notes for Raw, NXT, and SmackDown. I did pretty much listen to it. I didn't really watch it a whole lot this week. Actually, I take that back. I was not able to watch SmackDown because, for whatever reason, my recorder did not catch the programming. I don't know if it was because maybe the time was different. I'm not sure, but once I get to the SmackDown section, just bear with me. I did take notes from from Bleacher Report, so we're just going to have to go off that. Anywho, let's go ahead and start off with Monday Night Raw. We had pretty much the opening where Miz and Logan Paul were already brawling in the ring before Raw even aired on USA, and fans were definitely getting into it. It was a good way to go ahead and get the fans engaged in the program before we even get started. And I have to say that was definitely a smart move, especially with now WWE being under the Triple H and Stephanie power. I think things are going to start looking up a little better. Anywho, we go on to the first match. We end up seeing, I take that back. I'm sorry. We actually had a Bloodline promo that cut a killer promo like they usually have in the last 2 years. But then Theory tries to come down, ruins the parade of the Bloodline with his little Money in the Bank briefcase, which to no avail. He tries to attack one of the Usos as they tried to exit the ring. Of course, one of the Usos did provoke the start of that by bumping shoulders with Theory, and Theory tries to attack him with the briefcase. However, Roman ends up holding them off. And now we go into the first match of the night. My apologies again. We have the team of Bobby Lashley and Drew McIntyre defeating the team of Theory and Sheamus, which was a great match overall. We see the end with Bobby Lashley making Theory tap out to the Hurt Lock. And Theory tapped out pretty quick. I mean, pretty obvious. He wants to save himself for the United States Championship rematch at SummerSlam. Then we go on to pretty much a little promo where Bianca Belair's in the ring about ready to have the interview, but before she can even say a word, Becky Lynch comes down to interrupt, and lo and behold, end result, the two ladies get in a really physical brawl, and it takes many officials to pretty much separate it, like most typical brawls that end the interview. Before we got match number 2 off, it was the celebration of Rey Mysterio's 20th anniversary with WWE, which I find a little odd with this celebration because there was a period of time Rey Mysterio really wasn't with WWE. He was with, I want to say it was with Lucha Underground. I can't remember. But needless to say, I guess they're counting it regardless. Nice little celebration, of course, toward the end there. We got Finn Balor and Damian Priest Judgment Day getting ready to pretty much interrupt the celebration. But we already knew there was going to be a tag team match between the two teams. So moving on, the team of the Mysterios get the victory over Judgment Day. The double 619 by both Rey and Dominic actually looked really good this week compared to other times where they've attempted to try it. I do feel Dominic still needs a little more time to develop in the ring. I think he needs to maybe just go down and spend a little bit of time down there in NXT and work on his in-ring skills a bit. And later on, we see the backstage area where the other talent is celebrating the 20th anniversary of Rey Mysterio, and lo and behold, Judgment Day's got ruined again. Rhea Ripley comes into the room, tries to start some stuff with Rey, but gets in the face of Aaliyah Mysterio and shoves Aaliyah to the back and pulls and drags Dominic out just for Rey Mysterio to follow and get attacked from behind by both Damian Priest and Finn Balor. It was just a little bit of a brutal beatdown, especially with Priest powerbombing Rey Mysterio through a table in the back. Moving on to match number 4, Alexa Bliss defeats Doudrop, who was accompanied to the ring by Nikki, almost superhero, and despite the amount of interference Nikki tried to create in the match, it just wasn't enough. Doudrop did get some good offensive, oversized power maneuvers on Alexa Bliss, but Alexa was able to kick out and gets her little signature DDT in there and gets the 1-2-3 on Doudrop. Then makes it pretty clear that she's going to come after whoever the winner of Bianca Belair and Becky Lynch on the Raw Women's Championship match at SummerSlam. And I'm actually really excited to see this because I think it's about time we have Alexa Bliss get back to where she belongs, right in the picture of the top prize for the women's division in WWE. In match number 4, the unlikely tag team of AJ Styles and Dolph Ziggler get the victory over Alpha Academy, and what led up to that was a backstage segment where Theory's little puppets, Alpha Academy, interrupt Dolph Ziggler and AJ Styles having a conversation in the back and makes the challenge to Ziggler and Styles, letting them know they can't defeat a superior team like the Alpha Academy. Match was accepted, and we saw the results. AJ Styles, Dolph Ziggler, Tree Trunk Otis, and Chad Gable, all phenomenal athletes. And I can't say enough that this was definitely a really great technical skilled match. And due to my very great note-taking, if you didn't notice my sarcasm there, I think I might have missed the Impulse of TV. I can't remember if it was before the AJ and Ziggler match or after. Nonetheless, we had Logan Paul do his Impulse of TV segment on Raw and calls out The Miz to finish it off. Then we see Maurice come out, and alongside Miz comes down pretty much a couple minutes later to set up the sneak attack for Ciampa to hit Logan Paul from behind. And Logan Paul did a good job holding his own on both men for a little while there, but eventually it was just too much for Logan Paul, and Miz gets the skull crushing finale on Logan Paul, and that was the end of that segment. It looks like that maybe Ciampa might have a little bit of a role at SummerSlam, knowing how the whole heel thing's going to go here. And then in the main event, we saw the 6-man tag match, the Bloodline getting the victory over Riddle and the Street Profits. It was just a all-out great physical match. It looked like right toward the end, Riddle was going to hit the RKO on Roman. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. Roman gets the spear on Riddle. 1, 2, 3, match over. It took a lot out of Riddle, and I would say it also took a lot out of all the other 5 competitors. You could see that they were just drained after the match, how well they performed and worked their asses off. But as the Bloodline was trying to exit, Seth freaking Rollins music hits, comes down to the ring, does a little stare off with his old Shield buddy Roman, but then moves on and goes on to attack Riddle a little more, gives him a curb stomp on the steel steps, and it looked like he managed to kind of maybe got a little too aggressive with Riddle on the steel steps. Riddle ended up suffering an injury, which pretty much costed him the match happening at SummerSlam, so I feel bad for that aspect. Overall, I thought Raw was going in a much better direction, as everybody, or I should say most everybody knows, with Vince McMahon now retired. It's now Triple H and Stephanie McMahon era coming in full effect, and I'm expecting great things to see out of all 3 programs, including SummerSlam. If I were to give my typical rating of the thumbs down, thumbs in the middle, thumbs up, I would definitely say, just like AEW, it was more in between the thumbs in the middle, thumbs up. I felt this program was a little better than previous weeks. However, I definitely would like to see less promos and more action. Zoe Stark starts off the NXT 2.0 program with a little promo on how she come back from her injury and having surgery done, and the doctors gave her pretty much a year to recover, and she did it in 9 months. Congratulations to Zoe Stark on working so hard to get back to the ring. Unfortunately, she gets interrupted by Cora Jade and Toxic Attraction, and somewhere in the fold, Cora Jade just gets forgotten in the conversation, as Toxic Attraction pretty much overpowers the whole promo segment. Zoe Stark tries to challenge Mandy Rose for the NXT Women's Championship that night, but Gigi Dolan interrupts and says, "No, you're going to face me tonight, and you're not even going to make it to the NXT Championship match because I'm going to take you out." And lo and behold, we go into match number 1. Grayson Waller gets the victory over Wesley. Really great battle between the 2 young stars. Unfortunately, there was a little help from Trick Williams, where Grayson Waller knocks Wesley out of the ring, and Trick Williams, all pretty much covered up in some weird clothing, I guess boxing robe, and had boxing gloves, and pretty much throws a nice punch to Wesley's back to almost get him counted out, but Wesley makes it in the ring, but unfortunately gets the finisher from Grayson Waller. 1, 2, 3, match over. And I'm sure this will definitely add some steam for Wesley as he'll continue his feud with Trick Williams down the road. Match number 2, Apollo Crews defeats Zion Quinn, and that was I'm not sure what to call it. It was a solid match, but I don't think either talent really gained anything from it. Both are athletic, but I think Zion's character's kind of hit a wall where nobody's really interested in it. I think maybe either it's time to give the guy a gimmick change or whatever. I mean, it's just time to freshen the guy up. Apollo Crews, I feel bad because they sent him back to NXT to get better, and I kind of feel like this match was a step backwards for him. In match number 3, Zoe Stark gets the victory over Gigi Dolan, and pretty much I think Zoe Stark dominated that whole match and looked great in the ring, and I think she's getting set up very well for her run for the NXT Women's Championship. Unfortunately for Zoe, she gets the sneak attack from Cora Jade post-match, and up until Roxanne Perez comes out and makes the save, and Cora Jade pretty much runs off like a little chicken shit. In a backstage segment, we find out that NXT Heatwave, the NXT Women's Championship, Mandy Rose will defend against Zoe Stark on August 16th, which I feel that's going to end up being a really good match, especially the way Mandy Rose has improved her in-ring skills. I have really high expectations for this match. What I don't really understand is with the segment with Toxic Attraction and Sarray. Sarray basically comes to challenge Mandy Rose to a match, and after belittling her, Mandy Rose basically tells Sarray, yeah, we'll have a match next week on NXT 2.0, so that's going to be interesting. Then we go on to yet another promo where Roxanne Perez is alongside with Alundra Blaze and announces she's going to relinquish her NXT Women's Tag Team Championship. And I thought it was really awesome to have Alundra Blaze in that segment as she comes in with the garbage can that Cora Jade threw the NXT Women's Tag Team Championship in, and Alundra Blaze recognizing the wrong she did when she went to WCW back as Medusa with the WWF Women's Championship then, where she threw it right in the garbage can on live TV. I think it was a good move by creative to develop that little backstage segment and to also put some respect back onto a championship for the women. That was definitely very cool of Alundra. Jesus, I cannot say her name. Alundra Blaze to do that little segment with Roxanne Perez. And then we cut to another promo with Solo Sikoa challenging Von Wagner to pretty much a Falls Count Anywhere match at next week's NXT 2.0 episode, and Von Wagner accepts. So we're going to have a pretty killer match between these two bit heathens, and I guarantee it will not disappoint. JD McDonough comes out to the arena and pretty much introduces himself to everyone, and did pretty much a really good psychology of showing some knowledge of how he can affect the human anatomy, no matter what muscle, joint, whatever. It was a very good segment, having him go with the likes of trying to get into the psychology of a fan, and then the pretty much the ring announcer, the bell, the timekeeper, I guess you call it. And then he moves on to Wade Barrett, Vic Joseph, which that was a little bit uncomfortable, it looked like, for Vic, but I'm sure it was all pretty much well thought out. And then he goes to the ring and Braun Breaker comes out, and before he could really do anything to Braun Breaker gives JD the headbutt from hell and knocks him loose. However, there was that sadistic smile from JD McDonough after he looked at Braun Breaker after that headbutt, which pretty much shows maybe he got into Braun Breaker's head ring psychology-wise. It'll be an interesting match at Heatwave between these two. I'm looking very forward to it. In fact, I could even possibly see JD McDonough taking the title off Braun Breaker. Who knows? And after having his students disrespected by Giovanni Vinci, Andre Chase challenges Giovanni Vinci to a match. Unfortunately, he comes short. Although this was definitely Andre Chase's best showing. Giovanni Vinci made Chase look really good in this. In fact, very well deserved match for Andre Chase displaying his in-ring talent. I think the guy could definitely get a little more out of how much he does for the promotion. But who knows, maybe this is a step where he's going to get better. And I really hope so. But it definitely wouldn't make sense to stop Giovanni Vinci's heel momentum either. Mainly because he wrestles just like a veteran already. And if he keeps going the way he is, I think Giovanni Vinci may jump to the main roster very sooner than what we all expect. Then we have a few backstage segments going on. And I forgot to mention in the Indy Hartwell and Alundra Blaze segment, it was pretty much announced that on the next episode of NXT 2.0, It sounded like it was going to be a fatal 4-way elimination tag match for the NXT Women's Tag Team Championship. And so far, the participants I know are Caden Carter, Katana Chance, Yulisa Leon, and Valentina Feroz, and Toxic Attraction. I'm not sure who the fourth team is. I'm thinking it might be Ivy Nile and Tatum Paxley. I'm not quite sure. But it is a fatal 4-way. It's kind of weird. Fatal 4-way elimination match. To me, it should just be a 4-way elimination match and not a fatal, because a fatal 4-way match would mean the first team that scores the fall, whether it's by by pinfall or submission. So we'll see what happens out of that one. Whoever ends up winning that will definitely earn that for sure. In match number 5 of the night, Indy Hartwell gets a quick victory over Ariana Grace, and by all means, it wasn't a real pretty match. I will say Indy Hartwell looked a lot better than her previous match, but Ariana Grace definitely needs to step it up in the ring. I think they just need to get her a little more time in the Performance Center and improve those skills big time. Her mic skills weren't bad, but we just need to see better ring work out of her. And then going on to the main event, the D'Angelo family defeats the Diamond Mine in the 8-man tag match. And just like what we've seen in recent weeks, seems like Roderick Strong seems to be the problem child in the whole faction. And I think down the line, where Julius keeps trying to overtalk Roderick, we're going to eventually see Julius Creed and Roderick Strong battle for the leader of Diamond Mine, which I think that will be a great match overall. If that does happen, I really hope Julius ends up winning and he takes control of Diamond Mine and keeps the faction going but kicks Roddy out. I think that would definitely be the great thing to keep that faction alive for sure. SmackDown is going to be a very fast one. Again, I apologize. My recorder didn't record, so as usual, some type of technical difficulties managed to fluster me. So we'll just get right to it. I'm just going to go over the results. The starting match, Donnybrook match, whatever the hell that is. I'm not sure what it was. Obviously, the winner gets the title. The undisputed WWE Universal Title Championship match at Clash at the Castle. Drew McIntyre gets the victory over Sheamus. Match number 2, which originally was supposed to be Lacey Evans and Aaliyah. Apparently, Lacey Evans was not medically cleared. So, Lacey Evans' replacement is Shotzi. Shotzi gets the victory over Aaliyah. However, after the match, Ronda Rousey comes down and whoops some ass. She comes down and makes it pretty clear she's pissed off and wants her title back. In match number 3, which was a little weird going by my notes, the team of Liv Morgan and Ronda Rousey ends up defeating the team of Natalya and Sonya Deville, which, even though I didn't watch it, the match seemed to make somewhat sense as a typical go-home for SummerSlam. Of course, you get the two opponents that are going to collide in the big event that tag with each other to see if they can get along. But from reading on the Bleacher Report, Morgan didn't really want to tag in Ronda Rousey at all to show that she can hold her own in the ring, and all it did was create some tension between the two, which is a good heat to have in their little feud there, the main premium live event. And in match number 4, the main event match of the night, the Viking Raiders pretty much dominate the New Day, and post-match injury set up for well, sorry, injury getting set up for Xavier Woods to go out for a while. They pretty much kayfabe injury, Xavier Woods' ankle there. Uh, Not sure what Xavier's going out for. I haven't done any reading on the dirt sheets and all that, but hopefully it won't be for too long. My side notes: Theory attacks Drew McIntyre, I guess, post match in the opening match of the night with the Money in the Bank briefcase. Jesus, I can really talk. And just barely lays Drew beaten down in the ring or outside the ring, whichever it was. Happy Corbin comes in and gives a low blow to Pat McAfee, which we see the return of favor later at SummerSlam. There was a referee's instruction segment between the Street Profits and the Usos, which I'm not sure what that was all about, but it sounded like it was just Jeff Jarrett letting them know what was allowed and what was not allowed. You would think the logic is already there for a basic tag team match for the championships on the line. Heyman addresses the main event for SummerSlam to the people in attendance, saying that Lesnar defeating Roman Reigns' streak will happen over his dead cold body, which, if anybody watched SummerSlam, that came pretty close. Brock Lesnar comes out to the ring, does his little circle stalking right around Paul Heyman, just to be interrupted by Theory coming down, trying to make a attempt to attack Brock Lesnar with the Money in the Bank briefcase. Unfortunately for Theory, that backfired as Brock Lesnar sent him to Suplex City and started beating Theory back with that Money in the Bank briefcase. I can talk, I promise. I wish I could have watched this event and watched that happen, just because, Theory doing such a great job being a little punk ass bitch, and it just gets on your nerves with that guy. But sounded like a Theory escaped the ring after that somewhat of a beatdown Brock Lesnar was getting him. Unfortunately, Drew McIntyre gets his revenge and claymores Theory just before Theory could even make it to the back. Then we saw the classic little stare down between Drew McIntyre and Brock Lesnar. Can't really give a rating for this show, and so I'm just going to say pretty much maybe thumbs in the middle, just based on what I was seeing other fans say on Twitter and Facebook. I forgot to give my rating for NXT 2.0. I think NXT 2.0 was more thumbs in the middle as well. I felt the storylines could have been a little bit better, but we're starting to see the transition in power at the top of WWE. I think things will eventually get better now that, like I said, Hunter and Stephanie are in control. So just give it time. Let's see what happens. Every company has its lows, but every company will go through their highs, and I see WWE about to start back on their highs here shortly. Alright, should we talk a little bit of SummerSlam now? Starting with the Raw Women's Championship match opening the event, Bianca Belair retains the Raw Women's Championship against Becky Lynch. Belair just impressive as usual, showing her strength. She hit a few moves that I thought were killer. The Spanish Fly, I thought she does that better than Sammy Guevara. Her spine buster just looks god-awful. Not god-awful in a bad way, but god-awful painful when she executes it on her opponents. I think maybe she would even make Arn Anderson open his eyes wide. And, the kiss of death finishing off the match. Yeah, I don't know if you could have asked for a much better performance. I would say the only downfall with that match was we just saw a little bit too much communication between Becky and Bianca. I think if we were to find a way to get the camera angles not get so close on that, it definitely would have made the match a lot better. But in the post-match, we see Becky give her respects, her legitimate respects to Bianca Belair, and we see Becky exit the ring, but then all of a sudden, as Bianca's celebrating, Bayley's music hits, and she comes down the aisle far enough to where she can have her eyes locked on Bianca Belair. And the next thing you know, we hear Bayley say, "Hey, that's not all yet." And then all of a sudden, Dakota Kai's music hits. Dakota Kai comes out to meet up with Bayley down there right toward the end of the entrance ramp. Sorry, I can't think the words of it. And it definitely threw fans off. I mean, nobody was expecting this. But then Bayley goes, "Oh, I'm not done yet. There's one more." And so it goes quiet, and then all of a sudden we hear Io Shirai's music hit. Io Shirai comes down and joins Dakota Kai and Bayley. So now it looks like we got a new 3-woman faction coming to the ring. They all get right up in Bianca's face until Becky Lynch comes back in and she has Bianca's back. And it looked like both Bianca and Becky were ready to fight all 3 of them. And unfortunately, we didn't get to see any action other than Bayley, Dakota Kai, and Io Shirai, and it ends up backing off, exits the ring, and heads back to the locker room. And judging by the way Becky and Bianca looked at each other, it was almost like Becky was letting Bianca know she owes her one for that. So who knows, maybe there will be one more match just for the makeup of helping defend Bianca. It'll be interesting. Match number 2, Logan Paul gets the victory over The Miz, who is accompanied to the ring by Maurice and Ciampa. And I have to say, I don't care what your feelings are, and I said this on Twitter, you can think whatever the hell you want of Logan Paul, but you cannot deny he was trained well and ready for this match. Other than, a couple slip-ups on the ropes because, Michael Cole eventually mentioned later in the night they were having issues with the humidity and the ropes being too slippery for the talent to stand on. Other than that one little snafu before the match even started, Logan Paul performed awesome. He performed 100%. Having the fans chant tiny balls just before the match even got underway was, just immature gigglish. I laughed, I'm not going to lie. But yeah, some of the great things you could see from Logan Paul. I mean, the moonsault off the ring onto The Miz. We see Ciampa try to get a cheap shot in. He did it once, didn't get caught, but the second time he gets caught, referee tries to eject him. Ciampa grabs a steel chair, sits at ringside until AJ Styles music hits, and pretty much AJ Styles brawls with Ciampa to get Ciampa to exit the area. Logan Paul hits another great move, the blockbuster that was, I'm going to say, I think it was made famous by Buff Bagwell. I don't remember any other talent really using that maneuver very much at the first. And then, Logan Paul doing the frog splash off the top rope onto the announcer's table with The Miz laying on it. Oh man, I was really expecting The Miz move out of the way, but he did not. It managed to have one hell of a holy shit chant going on in the arena, and I'll tell you, it was everything about that match had me in awe. Logan Paul was ready. He came ready. He signed a contract with WWE to be with them for quite some time, I believe. I think this guy will end up being a great wrestler if he decides to continue on with it. The thing I did really love toward the end, Logan Paul gets a phenomenal forearm but doesn't get the 3 count, but finishes off The Miz with the skull-crushing finale. That was just sweet, and that's what put The Miz down for the 1-2-3. Going into match number 3 for the United States Championship rematch. Unfortunately for Theory, Bobby Lashley retains. Theory tries to attack Lashley before the match even starts with the Money in the Bank briefcase. The ref checks on Bobby Lashley, and Bobby Lashley tells the ref he can still go. And at one point, Theory tries to get counted out. Doesn't work. Bobby Lashley gets his ass back in the ring. And not saying Theory didn't have some offense. He had very little, but Bobby Lashley probably got so pissed off with being attacked and all that. He just pretty much took it right to Theory. Gets him in the Hurt Lock. Even though Theory lasted a little longer this time in the Hurt Lock, but he ends up tapping out. Bobby Lashley, still your WWE United States Champion. Going into match number 4, the team of the Mysterios gets the victory over Judgment Day's Finn Balor and Damian Priest, who was accompanied by Rhea Ripley. And this was a no DQ match, folks. And the thing that kind of bothered me with this is why a single member of each team can only be in the ring at once. If it's no DQ, I don't think you really need to worry about tagging in and out. It should pretty much just be like Texas Tornado rules. All 4 competitors should be in that ring, and just like a Texas Tornado match, whoever gets the fall first wins. Yeah, it was a little illogical as far as the whole no DQ nonsense. But it was a setup, I mean, Rhea Ripley, of course, gets involved. She trips the Mysterios when they were trying to do a double 619 attempt, which I have to give it to her. She actually timed that pretty well, tripping up both Dominic and Ray. Not very often you can pull something like that off, but she did. Unfortunately, though, after she got involved, Edge returns. Almost like in Brood fashion, but still in different music. And he comes down, attacks both Priest and Balor, gives Priest the spear, then gives Balor the spear. And then Dominic hit the 619 on Balor. Ray hits the splash. 1-2-3, match over. Definitely not one of the greatest matches, but I think Edge, for the safe saying, saved that whole entire segment. It didn't take away from the entertainment value, but for me, when it comes to logic, you just got to make sure you're planning these matches right. And like I said, the thing that bugs me is no DQ match and you still got to tag in and out. That doesn't really make any sense. Dominic's ring work still needs a lot of improvement. It was very showable, or very noticeable, showable. Very noticeable for that event. And like I said in the Raw segment, God, I really cannot talk. I apologize. I think Dominic definitely needs more time developing his in-ring skills. He's over with the fans. I think he'll continue to be over with the fans. But for the most part, if he can make these moves look just a little bit better, I think he'll live almost the same legacy as his father. In match number 5, which was definitely not a great match as well, but it was very entertaining. Pat McAfee gets the victory over Happy Corbin, and what really kicked off this whole segment was Pat McAfee coming out to the entrance choir of bum-ass Corbin, and then from there it was just the very minute the bell started, super kick right off the bat from Pat McAfee onto Corbin, which rung Corbin's bell really good. But then Corbin manages to get the attack on McAfee outside the ring and attacks him while he's laying down on an announce table. And you could see Michael Cole getting a little concerned for Pat McAfee. And Corbin took some exception to Michael Cole showing his support and shoves Michael Cole right back into his chair. Michael Cole giving Corbin some lip to tell him to worry about his business in the ring and not with him. And lo and behold, we see Pat McAfee make a comeback to get the offense back onto Happy Corbin. But at some point, McAfee accidentally shoves Corbin right into the referee, and takes advantage, and while the referee's kind of getting his composure back, Pat McAfee returns the favor and gives Happy Corbin the low blow, the DX chop, crotch chop signal, and then does pretty much like a combination of the Canadian Destroyer pinfall combination and gets the 1-2-3. Again, definitely not one of the greatest matches out there, but very entertaining. Fans were behind McAfee the whole time. It's very hard to cheer for Corbin, I'm sorry. But Corbin does a great job just making people hate him so much, and I think he's definitely one of the most underrated heels here in modern day wrestling. Next up, the undisputed WWE Tag Team Championship. The Usos retain against the Street Profits, with Jeff Jarrett being the special guest referee. Jeff Jarrett did an awesome job performing, and definitely shows he has not lost his step in ring psychology and ring awareness. And the thing that was really awesome is seeing how great a shape the guy is for his age. He is almost great in good a shape as Billy Gunn is, and I believe they're similar ages too. I also love the fact that Jeff Jarrett was showing what type of referee he was by not taking shit from either team. He was laying down the law and enforcing the rules big time. I would say for the most part the Usos did dominate the match. The Street Profits did get some offense in there, but it just wasn't enough. They did at one point get their finisher with Montez flying high off the top rope and splashing, but unfortunately it wasn't enough to get the 3 count. And we see Montez Ford lose his cool with Jeff Jarrett, and even taunting him if he knew how to count to 3. And, I think that pretty much costed the Street Profits the match there, because the Usos came back, managed to isolate Montez Ford on the outside. He tried to get a blind tag to Dawkins, but I think the Usos were a little too smart. They took advantage, double-teamed Dawkins. They get the 1D on Dawkins, and 1-2-3 retain their undisputed WWE Tag Team Championship. Now what happens from here, who knows? We heard rumors that, the Street Profits might eventually split and go single ways. If they do, I think based off seeing the way Montez Ford reacted to Jeff Jarrett, I think it might end up being Montez Ford going heel and Dawkins going face, but who knows? That may not happen either. This is just speculation if that does happen. But it was good to see that the Usos pretty much retain their championship and staying strong, keeping the Bloodline the most dominant faction in pro wrestling or sports entertainment, whatever you want to call it. And in match number 7 for the SmackDown Women's Championship, Liv Morgan, in controversial fashion, retains her championship against Ronda Rousey. The whole reason it was controversial is because Ronda Rousey had Liv in the armbar, and Liv was able to maneuver Ronda to get her shoulders down. But as we watched in 2 different replays, the first replay showed Ronda getting pinned, but it wasn't showing anything where Liv Morgan was tapping out. But in the second replay, it clearly showed Liv Morgan tapped out before the 3 count. And technically Ronda Rousey has a legitimate reason to be pissed off and going batshit crazy, because she technically should be the WWE SmackDown Women's Champion right now. And yeah, it's very frustrating to see things like that happen, because, we watched what happened with Ronda Rousey back at, was it WrestleMania 36 or 35? I can't remember. But we saw where Becky was pinning Ronda Rousey, and she technically didn't have all her Ronda's shoulders down for that 3 count. And yet again, Ronda's got screwed legitimately. Yeah. But we see Ronda Rousey take her frustrations post-match and continues the attack on Liv Morgan, which that's understandable. But they're also doing the right thing. They're having Ronda turn heel the right way is, I guess, what I'm trying to say. This was the one time where I would say Ronda Rousey looked better in the ring than Liv Morgan, where Liv Morgan has been training longer to be in the ring. But nonetheless, we saw the result, and I think we'll eventually see Liv and Ronda number 3 come up very shortly. We'll see how it plays out on the next episode of Friday Night SmackDown. And in the main event, which I think was the best last man standing match I've ever seen in WWE history, for the undisputed WWE Universal Championship, Roman Reigns manages to defeat Brock Lesnar. And of course, I think everybody knew we were going to see Theory get involved somewhere. He comes down, takes Roman out with the briefcase, and eventually gets caught by Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar pretty much sends him flying head first into the Money in the Bank briefcase on the floor. Pretty much takes Theory out for the rest of the night. The use of the tractor that Brock Lesnar brought down the entranceway when he came down just before the match even started, that was definitely unique. Just when you think you almost seen everything in the world of pro wrestling or sports entertainment. Yeah, that definitely shows we have not seen everything. The use of the tractor during the match, though, was probably may have made the match a little longer than what it needed to be. But it was a very brutal contest between these two. I don't think anyone expected anything short of that. Brock Lesnar mostly dominated that match. Roman Reigns got quite a bit of offense in, but not as much as I felt Brock did. However, with the bloodline being strong, we knew the Usos were going to come down at some point. They did. Pretty much helped Roman out. Paul Heyman gets involved too, tries to stop Brock Lesnar, but it wasn't enough. Roman Reigns threw every single damn thing he could at Brock. Speared him, Superman punched him, hit him with both titles. Guess you can't call it belts because belts hold up your pants. And good Lord, it took everything. They had to eventually cover Brock Lesnar, which this is the part that I don't see makes sense. Because, last standing match, when you knock your opponent down, I think you're supposed to just let the referee count. But if you do something to, whether it's do any kind of attack on the opponent while they're down, I think you're actually supposed to restart the count. And for whatever reason, when they kept burying Brock with steel steps, tops of the tables, chairs, everything in the book, the referee still continued his count, which, again, another illogical issue when it comes to the rules of professional wrestling. But yeah, I don't know. That one just threw me off a little bit. However, I think it was the right call to have Roman retain, because this is what I would like to see. If Cody can get himself back and ready for next WrestleMania, and Roman can stay injury-free and healthy till WrestleMania, and it doesn't necessarily need to be Cody, but I think this is the direction I would see it going. I think Roman Reigns should not drop that title until WrestleMania 40. And the reason I say that is just putting more prestige on that title as he keeps having successful matches against every opponent he has defending those two belts. You look at the reigns like CM Punk, JBL, Hulk Hogan, John Cena, Bob Backlund, Bruno Sammartino, Diesel. Yeah, this is definitely putting some really high prestige. It's been forever since we've seen anyone hold the top prize for more than 2 years, and I believe Roman is just, I believe he's about 35 days from making that history. And if he does, I'm sorry, this definitely puts high prestige on both the Universal and WWE Championship. Nonetheless, however they set it up, whoever does defeat Roman for the undisputed WWE Universal Championship, it's going to be a major career accolade for whoever that talent is they set up to defeat Roman. In conclusion to the event, as far as my rating goes, with thumbs down, thumbs in the middle, thumbs up, I felt this deserves 2 thumbs up. I thought this was the best SummerSlam I've seen in probably the past 2.5 decades. I almost will go as far as saying I think this was the best one since we watched Bret Hart take the Intercontinental Championship off Mr. Perfect. And yes, I did go there because I believe that was the last SummerSlam that really stuck out in my mind that I thought was really awesome. With this being the first premium live event since Hunter and Stephanie has taken control, I think this is the step in the right direction for WWE, and it's only going to get better. It's looking very promising, and I think our expectations will be much better here in the near future. That's going to wrap it up for this week's episode of the Wrestling Fans Insight. I hope that by next week we'll be back and we'll have our regular mojo going on. I always feel like I do a better job when I have a co-host because, it's easier to talk with another person doing these podcasts and my brain's not always freezing up. But I do thank each and every one of you for tuning into this week's episode. I want to say thank you to Libsyn.com for allowing us to host our podcast on their server. We couldn't do it without them and getting our voices out there. Also want to give a big thank you to Pixabay.com where we donate some money and they allow us to download their royalty-free music, which is provided by Coma Media, G-Vid, and Light Saturation for these episodes. I'd like to give a shout out to a few of our listeners, Ted the Hillbilly Hill with the Hill Truth, Austin Boyer with the Wrestling World, Agosto All Elite, who does a podcast with the bad guy Noah at Agosto All Elite Podcast, BC Hunter, Jay Myers at the Wrestle with the Truth Podcast, the Armchair Booking Wrestling Podcast. I might have said that name wrong. I apologize, guys. And want to give a shout out to the Midwest Marks Podcast, the Mid Podcast, and a few of our listeners, Carlo Estrada, Carolina, known as Carol Bucks on the Twitter, Carrie Duvall, Jason Kennedy, NWO Machine, Brian Ballard, Heather, known as Bama Girl Forever, or Forever, at Real Jack Cassidy, Ben Holloway, Spoon of Zeke, Sage Up, known as Sage Alvarez, James McMahon, Derek M., Matthew Ash. Thank you all for your continued support and cheering me on to keep doing this podcast. And 2 other shout outs. I'd like to give a shout out to my brother. I'm glad he's managed to take his personal time to come on and do these podcasts with me. I really wanted him to be the one at first, but I hesitated, and now I'm glad he's my co-host, and I love the guy to death. Also want to give a shout out to my wife who's on her way back up from Las Vegas. She just got done bowling a tournament down there in the really hot area part of Nevada. She shot over her normal average, which was awesome, and had tons of fun and got some bracket money back too. So great job, honey. Can't wait to see you when you get home. And just so you know, you can listen to our podcasts on all the big platforms like Spotify, iOS, Apple, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music. We also recently just went on with Deezer, Boomplay, Ghana, GeoSavin, Rezo, and a couple others I can't remember, and I apologize. I'll remember to do better on my next shout out. But I do thank everybody for your continued support. And I forgot, you can also try to interact with us. I managed to almost forget that part. You can interact with us on Facebook and the groups, the Fans of Pro Wrestling. You can also find me on Twitter at John, JohnWFIncite, spelled like the show, at John WF Insight. Other than that, you can also leave us a voicemail. Our number is 385-367-4772. You can leave us a voicemail at any time, and who knows, maybe it will make it on the air. And at some point down the future, I've now got my equipment to set up to do some live calls and even record off Twitter Spaces. So we're looking to maybe do a little more fun interaction with our shows in the future that way. It will take some time, but we will get it there. Other than that, I wish you all well. We'll catch you next Sunday. Peace out and be good to each other.